I've lived in this neighborhood for 10 years now, long enough to remember when the biggest issue was a kid's misplaced basketball. Now, it's a full-blown HOA battlefield, and I'm living at ground zero. My house is a simple ranch style on a quiet cul-de-sac. Nothing special, but it's mine. The only thing that ever caught a second glance was my mailbox. It was a classic black wrought iron with a little bird ornament on top, solid and unyielding. It had stood guard by my driveway for a decade without a single issue. Then the new president of the HOA moved in, a woman named Karen, with a perfectly manicured lawn and a personality like a serrated knife. The first incident was a month ago. I walked outside to grab the paper and found my mailbox knocked clean off its post. The iron was twisted, the bird ornament was gone, and the post was snapped at the base. I assumed a delivery truck must have misjudged the turn, so I replaced it with an exact replica. I even went to the same little garden shop to get another bird. 3 days later, same story. This time I saw the telltale tire tracks, a low profile, wide-set print that cut right across my lawn and ended at the shattered remains of my mailbox. It wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. I was annoyed, but I wasn't going to let it get to me. I patched it up again, securing the new post with a heavy-duty concrete mix. I even added some small, decorative landscaping bricks around the base, hoping to deter a repeat performance. The next morning flattened again. The concrete was cracked, the bricks were scattered, and the mailbox was bent like a piece of chewed gum. This wasn't a pattern. It was a vendetta. Every time, the same low, wide tire tracks. Every time, no witnesses, no apology. The fourth time it happened, I noticed something new. A small streak of bright pink paint scraped against the broken iron. It was a distinctive color, one I had seen before. It belonged to the new HOA president, Karen. Her car, a gaudy pink convertible, was a neighborhood landmark. The angle of the impact, the pink paint, the relentless timing, it all pointed to her. The problem wasn't some random idiot. It was Karen, the HOA president, and she was doing it on purpose. I tried to catch her in the act. I installed a small, inconspicuous security camera disguised as a garden gnome. The next morning, the mailbox was destroyed, and my little gnome lay in pieces on my lawn, its camera lens shattered. She was either watching me or incredibly lucky. Either way, I knew I had to go on the offensive. This wasn't just property damage. It was harassment. And it was time to confront the source directly. The next day, I gathered the evidence, the photos, the shattered gnome, the timeline of every incident, and the undeniable streak of pink paint. I marched down to the HOA office, a pristine white building with a perfectly symmetrical hedge and a sign that read, Community Harmony. Inside, the air smelled like expensive perfume and thinly veiled contempt. Karen sat behind a mahogany desk, wearing a matching pink pantsuit. Her nails, also pink, were tapping impatiently on the wood. A set of keys with a sparkly flamingo keychain lay beside her. Bingo. I'd like to file a complaint, I stated calmly, placing the stack of evidence on her desk. Someone's been repeatedly destroying my mailbox. It's happened 4 times in a month, and based on the evidence, I believe it's intentional. Karen barely glanced at the photos. Mailboxes aren't a priority for the board, she said, her voice dripping with indifference. And perhaps your mailbox is too close to the street. It's a safety hazard. It's within regulation. Karen, it's been there for 10 years without a single issue. She leaned back in her chair, a smirk playing on her lips. Well, if someone keeps hitting it, maybe it's a sign that it needs to be moved. How do you even know it's someone from the neighborhood? Because all the tire tracks come from one direction. Your street, I said, pointing to the photos. And because of this, I held up a close-up photo of the pink paint streak on the broken wrought iron. Karen's smirk faltered for a moment, then she chuckled, picking up her car keys and jingling them. Oh, sweetie, are you suggesting I did it? I drive a custom convertible. Do you honestly think I'd risk scratching my paint on your suburban eyesore? If the shoe fits. Her face hardened. You have no proof. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual community matters to handle. Maybe next time you'll put your cheap mailbox where it belongs. I didn't storm out. I just smiled, because in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that Karen was the one behind it. Her dismissive attitude, the mocking tone, the way she acted like her expensive car was a shield against any accusation. It was all confirmation, but I also knew she wasn't going to stop. Not until I did something she couldn't outrun. So I went back to my house and started planning. First, I tried simple things. I placed a series of solar-powered lights around the mailbox. They were gone the next day. I put up a small sign that said, "Property under surveillance." That vanished too. I even tried a makeshift fence of small decorative pickets. They were flattened to splinters. It was clear Karen wasn't just hitting my mailbox. She was systematically dismantling every attempt I made to protect it. That's when I stopped playing defense and decided to switch to an entirely new strategy. It was time for a little revenge, and it would be served cold, wrapped in steel. I pulled out my phone and called my insurance company. Hypothetically, I began, my voice casual. If a mailbox on a property were to be repeatedly damaged, and the owner wanted to replace it with something more, resilient like, say, a reinforced steel post, would that be an issue? The representative laughed. As long as it's on your property and complies with local regulations, you can build it out of solid gold if you want. Just put up a clear marker. Boom! The plan was set in motion. I placed an order for a custom-built steel post, an industrial-grade piece of hardware designed to withstand a direct hit. It was thick, heavy, and completely unyielding. I welded a new mailbox to the top, painting the entire thing the same black as my old one to make it blend in. I even reattached the little bird ornament, a tiny detail that I knew would infuriate Karen. The entire structure looked harmless, a perfect replica of my old one, but underneath it was a fortress. I dug a hole, filled it with enough high-grade concrete to anchor a small boat, and embedded the steel post deep into the ground. To a casual observer, it was just a mailbox. To anyone looking to cause trouble, it was a silent, unmoving wall. The last step was the sign. I had a small, bright yellow one made that read, "Private property, do not trespass. This mailbox is reinforced." It was subtle, but it was a clear warning. It was also a total bluff. I didn't have a camera, not a working one anyway, but Karen didn't know that. And then I waited. For a week, nothing happened. The mailbox stood tall and proud, a black sentinel at the end of my driveway. The little bird ornament glinted in the sun, a tiny, defiant signal. I almost started to believe Karen had given up, that she had gotten the message and decided not to escalate. But I was wrong. On the 8th day, I walked out to get the paper and saw it. Fresh tire ruts, a wide, low track that went right across my lawn, and a long, ugly scrape of pink paint on the steel post, just above the concrete base. The mailbox was untouched, not a dent or a scratch. But her car, I knew, had to be a different story. The game had just changed. Karen was no longer just targeting my mailbox. She was now locked in a battle with the reinforced steel core, and I had a feeling she was going to come back for a second round. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was too excited, too wired. I knew Karen wouldn't take this defeat lightly. She had already tried to wreck my old mailbox out of sheer pettiness. And now I had served her a piece of silent, unmoving steel. The scraped pink paint was proof she had tried and failed, but she didn't know what she was truly up against yet. So I decided to stay awake. By the 3rd morning, I was up early, coffee in hand, hidden behind the curtains of my living room window. Phone ready, screen recording on. Then I heard it, the high-pitched whine of an engine. Not a gentle hum, but a roar, a furious, frustrated sound. Karen's pink convertible, its engine screaming, rounded the corner of the cul-de-sac. She wasn't driving. She was charging. This wasn't a lazy, accidental turn. This was a deliberate act of revenge. I crouched low, peering through the slats of the blinds. She was coming fast, her tires spitting gravel and her engine revving. She was out for blood, or at least for a dented mailbox. I could almost hear her thoughts. "Let's see if your little sign can stop me now." Her tinted windows hid her face, but I could imagine the venomous snarl on her lips. The moment her car's bumper slammed into that mailbox, everything changed. The steel post didn't budge, but her car, that sleek, expensive, custom convertible, crumpled like an accordion. The hood buckled, the bumper exploded into a shower of plastic and metal, and a thick plume of steam hissed from under the crumpled hood. The car screeched to a halt as the airbags deployed with a dull thud. Karen, a vision of pink fury, stumbled out of the driver's side door, mascara streaked, hair flying, and utterly seething. "Are you insane?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the perfectly intact mailbox. I stood up from the window, calm as a lake, phone still recording. You hit my clearly marked mailbox on my property, I said, my voice flat. I warned the HOA multiple times. 2 police cars, their sirens a wail of justice, rolled up seconds later, probably called by a horrified neighbor who had heard the crash. Karen ran to them, a chaotic blur of pink, wailing about property traps, sabotage, and emotional distress. He did this on purpose. He set a trap for me, she cried, pointing at me. I simply held up my phone and showed them the video. The deputy watched, then turned to his partner and said, "Well, that's clear as day." Karen's face went from livid to ashen, a mask of pure shock and disbelief. She knew she was caught. The police report blamed her. She was fined for reckless driving, property damage, and, the cherry on top, had to pay for her own convertible repairs out of pocket. My mailbox, a symbol of quiet defiance, stood tall and unyielding, a monument to a suburban war won. If you enjoyed this wild HOA showdown, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next neighborhood battle. Drop your own crazy HOA or neighbor story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you're ready for more drama, click watch next to see the time the HOA tried to shut down my lights. Trust me, you won't believe how that ended.